Hello, and welcome back to MetalDisciple.com's The Week in Reviews. My name is George, and this week I've got 3 unsigned bands for you. Technically, these 3 bands span the last 2 weeks of reviews, as I was busy last week with the podcast and couldn't film. Anyway, this week I've got reviews from Twilight's Embrace, Human Collapse, and Tonic Breed. I'm a fan of both doom metal and more extreme styles such as black and death metal. And as such, the wicked procreation that is death doom holds great appeal. I love the monster riffs and melancholy from the doom side of the family, while reveling in the harsh vocals and darkness that inherits from the extreme side. It is safe to say that this is one of my favorite metal subgenres right now. Towards the end of March, I received an email from Twilight's Embrace, a melodic death doom band from Nottingham, England. The band is self-releasing their full-length debut, By Darkness Undone. With all my ranting lately about bands sending material without any kind of personal acknowledgement or biographical information, I just wanted to note that Twilight's Embrace gave me everything that I asked for. They addressed me by name, and they mentioned the site. They included a press release with bio information, a download link, and artwork. The fact that I get excited by these little things should indicate how little effort is made by many bands. Upon downloading the album, I started giving it a listen, and right away I knew I was going to enjoy By Darkness Undone. And then I proceeded to drop the ball. I told the band I would get a review out at the end of April to coincide with the release of the album. I failed in keeping that deadline, and my only real excuse is that somehow the album disappeared from my phone. Out of sight, out of mind. Luckily, that initial taste of the album kept tugging at the edges of my awareness, and I remembered only a week late that I wanted to cover the band. It would have been a real shame, and a total blunder on my part, to not end up covering Twilight's Embrace, because By Darkness Undone completely epitomizes where my taste in metal runs these days. Beautiful, clean, and quiet passages that give way to crushingly heavy slabs of metal, and haunting, clean vocals that transform into deep and commanding harsh growls. The songwriting and musicianship on By Darkness Undone are both top-notch. I could easily listen to an instrumental version of this album and be entranced by the music alone. Adding vocals to the mix just sweetens the pot. Clean vocals do not always show up in death doom, but in this case, they really work. They sound great and add to the depressive atmosphere. The harsh vocals are well enunciated and tear through the fabric of the music to grab the listener's attention. Remember back at the beginning when I said the band is self-releasing the album? That's right, these guys are not signed. Pardon me while my head explodes. Twilight's Embrace is one of the rare bands that gets me really, really excited. And they aren't even signed? I could totally hear this album on Peaceville or Rise Above or something even more substantial. Labels should be clamoring to sign Twilight's Embrace. When I get excited by an album, I tend to start looking ahead towards the end of the year and wondering whether I might be discussing it again come year-end list time. I have little doubt that Twilight's Embrace will be making an appearance on my list this year. Metal fans, make sure to check these guys out. And for metal's sake, someone please sign this band. I think the theme for this week is going to be unsigned bands. First, I covered the great unsigned UK band, Twilight's Embrace. Now I give you Human Collapse from St. Petersburg, Russia, and their first album, Darkness to Fall. It amuses me when people who are not into metal hear different kinds of metal music, and they swear it all sounds the same. They can hear black metal and death metal and not hear any difference at all. Yet, metal fans can split hairs over the tiniest of details. I mention this because Twilight's Embrace are a death doom band, and so too are Human Collapse. But to me, these two bands sound quite different. Sure, there are high-level similarities, but when one takes a closer look, the differences become apparent. Perhaps the differences in sound come from stylistic differences related to very different geographical locations. Many countries and regions put their own twist on different styles of metal. Where Twilight's Embrace hail from England, it makes sense that their music has a more gothic and romantic feel with plaintive clean vocals a la My Dying Bride. Human Collapse call Russia home, and their music, while also dark and somewhat gothic, has a much more strictly structured, no-nonsense driving feel. Most of the clean vocal parts are really just spoken words, leaving the bulk of the singing in a harsh vocal style. The vocals may be mostly harsh, but the music does maintain a melodic element that fluctuates between darkly beautiful and tight-fisted aggression. Whether melodic or crushingly heavy, the songs are lushly layered, giving the material a nice thick sound. I am once again amazed at the production quality coming from an unsigned band. The production on Darkness to Fall sounds every bit as good as any album you can think of released by a record label. It makes me pose the question, do we really need record labels anymore? In the old days, it used to be that a band couldn't make a production-worthy recording without the kind of money only record labels have lying around. But with digital production evening the playing field, these days, anyone with a computer can make incredible recordings. The internet then gives these bands access to the rest of the world. The only real card left in the record label's hand is having the money to promote releases to the most people possible. I can relate to this quandary. Metal Disciple has plenty of content out there for people to check out, but not the funds to promote the material, so metal fans around the world are aware it exists. Many a great metal record goes unnoticed simply because the band doesn't have the money to promote it properly. I do my best to try to bring albums like Darkness to Fall to metal fans' attention, but I too am just a small voice in a sea of humanity. If you happen to enjoy well-crafted death doom music, you could do a lot worse than checking out Human Collapse. Why not give your support and a few bucks to an unsigned band making great metal? Head over to Bandcamp and pick up the album. You can name your own price. How can you beat that? And finally, I bring you the third review in a row featuring an unsigned band. Perhaps this is the result of my obsessive compulsion to constantly seek out new bands and music, driving me to hunt for ever more obscure artists. Maybe it is my desire to help out unsigned bands that I find interesting. Probably it is a combination of both of these things. Regardless of the reason that drove me to hear this band, the ultimate reason I am covering them is that they make good music, so I feel inclined to tell the world. Tonic Breed is a thrash metal band from Norway, and Outsold is their second album. I received a CD copy of the album in the mail recently, and since I don't frequently get packages from Norway, although more often than one might think, I vowed to give the album a listen. I have to admit that the album cover put me off a little at first. The artwork style is one that I have come to associate with not-so-great thrash albums, so it didn't really draw me in right away. Despite this, I grabbed the CD and popped it into my car's player and gave it a listen on the way to the gym. The first song, Strife, in retrospect didn't really do much for me other than confirm that the band was at least better than I was expecting based on the impression left by the artwork. To be fair, I was only half listening at this point, so it wasn't until the second song, Fifth Estate, that I was shaken from my driving reverie and realized, wow, these guys are actually pretty good. So I started the song over and listened again. I think what really caught my attention about Fifth Estate was that it reminds me quite a bit of Forbidden from their Forbidden Evil era, both in the style of thrash and the vocal phrasing. From this point on, I gave the album my undivided attention, while still managing to drive. When I got home, I listened to the album again to be sure I was hearing what I thought I was hearing, and confirmed that Outsold is in fact as good as I thought it might be. A lot of thrash bands these days, understandably so, have a more modern-sounding thrash style that builds upon the foundation of the classic sound from the 80s. That is all well and good, but I still hunger for that original sound from my youth, and Outsold has that in spades, without sounding particularly dated, contrived, or derivative. This isn't to say I don't hear bits and pieces of influence or similarity in Tonic Breed's music. As I already mentioned, I hear some Forbidden, and at different points I also noticed some parts that reminded me of Slayer's Born of Fire, and a melodic lead that brought to mind the intro for Metallica's Fade to Black. I was even briefly reminded of Flotsam and Jetsam's M-Tech song by some of the cleaner passages on the song called Blackened Mind. We're all products of our environment and influences, so this is to be expected. I was just happy to be hearing music in this style, and to find that it is more than competently done. Tonic Breed reinforces my growing belief that music, and particularly metal, can one day survive and even thrive without need of the corporate machine. Money for proper promotion remains one of the last roadblocks to complete creative independence. The business of music is changing, though, hopefully for the better. Head over to iTunes and pick up the album. It's a great listen, and you'll be supporting an unsigned band, part of the true metal underground. Also, make sure to check out episode 4 of Metal Disciples' Metalheads podcast this week, when we'll be talking about the band and playing a pair of tracks from the album. You can download Metalheads for free in the iTunes Store podcast section, or you can stream it from wearemetalheads.com. Alright, that's it for this week. Make sure to check out MetalDisciple.com for more news, reviews, and videos. And as I mentioned, there's also our new podcast, Metalheads. Give that a listen too, and let us know what you think. Until next time, stay metal.